Here's the bottom line. Real estate is one of the only games out there where the rules are literally built to make you rich if you know how to play them. The government gives you tax breaks, banks give you leverage. Even tenants, whether long-term or short-term, are essentially buying the property for you. But the catch is this: you need to know the loopholes, and you need to actually use them. Think about it like this. If you walked into a test with all the answers printed right on the back, would you ignore them? Of course not. Yet most beginners go into real estate blind, paying full taxes, putting down huge amounts of cash, stressing over interest rates, when in reality, there are paths, shortcuts, little hidden doors that make the journey 10 times easier. And they're legal. They're not shady. They're literally written into the system. You can house hack your way into living almost free. You can use FHA loans with tiny down payments. You can use depreciation to wipe out your taxes. You can roll profits into the next deal with a 1031 exchange. You can even piggyback on someone else's good credit to get approved for better loans. These aren't theories. These are things happening every single day in your city, probably by people who are way less smart than you but had the guts to try. And here's what I really want you to take away. You don't need to be rich to start. You don't need to have it all figured out. You need to know the game and then step into it. Your first deal doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to get you in motion. Because once you get that first property, even a small one, you'll see how the machine works. You'll watch how the money flows, how the taxes shrink, how tenants or guests cover your mortgage, and you'll never look at money the same way again. So here's my challenge to you. Stop thinking you have to wait until you're older, richer, or more experienced. The loopholes are here. Now, the rules don't care if you're a beginner or a pro. They only care if you're willing to use them. And if you want more free game like this, make sure you stick around with me here at Real Estate with Pingo. I'm breaking down the strategies, the tricks, the hacks, all the things schools never taught you about building wealth through property. Follow along, because the sooner you learn this stuff, the sooner you can start stacking passive income and building real freedom. So let's actually build out an example so you can picture how these loopholes work in real life. Imagine you've got $10,000 saved up. Most people think, well, that's not enough to buy a house. Guess I'll wait until I have $50,000 wrong. Here's how you flip that $10,000 into owning property without getting buried. Let's say you're looking at a duplex listed for $250,000. You decide you're going to live in one unit and rent out the other. That qualifies you for an FHA loan because technically you're still living in the house. FHA only asks for 3.5% down. 3.5% of $250,000? That's $8,750. Boom. You're in the game with your $10,000. You even have a little left over for closing costs or maybe to fix something small. Now, here's where it gets fun. Let's say the rent on that other unit is $1,200 a month. And your total monthly mortgage, taxes, and insurance come out to $1,600. What's happening here? Your tenant is covering 75% of your housing bill every month. You're basically living in your own unit for like $400 out of pocket. Try finding rent that cheap in 2025. Good luck. But wait, it gets even better. Remember depreciation? The government lets you write off a chunk of that building's value every year. On a $250,000 duplex, let's say $200,000 is counted as the building. The rest is land. Divide that by 27.5 years, and you get around $7,200 a year in paper losses. That means when you file taxes, it looks like your property lost $7,200, even though you're collecting rent and living almost for free. That paper loss wipes away your taxable rental income, maybe even offsets other income. That's thousands of dollars you don't owe Uncle Sam. Now here's the loophole twist. If you ever sell that duplex and you've made a profit, you can use something called a 1031 exchange. That's where you roll the profit into another property. And guess what? You don't pay capital gains tax right then. You kick the can down the road. Basically, you keep leveling up, property after property, without getting hit with a giant tax bill. And by the time you finally cash out decades later, inflation has already eaten away the value of those taxes. All right, let's slide over to loans again, because this is where people get really sneaky. I've seen investors do this move. They buy a property with FHA, 3.5% down, live in it for the required 1 year, then move out, rent both units, and guess what? They can go use FHA again on another property. Suddenly they've got two properties with almost nothing down.
That's a real loophole people use to build portfolios fast. And then there's the credit game. If your credit isn't great, you're going to pay higher interest, right? But here's the hack. You can credit piggyback by becoming an authorized user on a family member's or friend's old credit card that has a perfect history. You don't even have to use the card. It just reports their good history onto your score. Boom, your credit jumps, and you qualify for better loan terms. Banks love numbers, not excuses. Oh, and here's a little bank trick not many beginners know. Some lenders will let you use the future rental income of the property you're buying to help you qualify. They'll literally look at what other rentals in that area are charging and say, okay, this property should bring in $1,200 a month, so we'll add that to your income on paper. That makes it easier to qualify for the loan even if your paycheck doesn't look huge. Now, let's say you're like, but what if I don't want to deal with tenants right away? There's even loopholes there. Some investors buy properties and immediately set them up as short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBO, stuff like that. Depending on the area, you can make 2 or 3 times more per month compared to a normal tenant. And guess what? The expenses are still deductible. Cleaning fees, supplies, even furniture for the place. You can write it all off because it's for the business. So you see how this works? Real estate isn't about just having cash. It's about knowing the rules. And the rules are written in a way that reward you for buying property. That's the whole loophole game. Buy smart, use the tax code to your advantage, use the bank's programs against them, and keep rolling your money forward without letting it get eaten alive by taxes and interest.
So here's the thing about real estate that nobody really tells you. There are loopholes. Not illegal tricks, not shady scams, but legit legal moves that people use to pay almost nothing in taxes or get loans for way cheaper than you think. And if you're smart enough to know them before you buy your first property, you're already playing the game at a higher level than 90% of beginners. Let's start with taxes, because that's the one that scares people the most. Everyone's like, if I buy property, I'm going to get hit with property tax, income tax, capital gains tax, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that's true, if you buy wrong. But here's the loophole. The tax code is basically a playbook for real estate investors. First loophole, you can write off almost every expense related to your property. We're talking mortgage interest, property taxes, insurance, management fees, even the gas you used to drive to check on the place. If you buy a rental property, all that suddenly becomes tax deductible. That means when tax season comes, the IRS doesn't just look at the rent you collected. They look at all the stuff you paid out. So you can show way less income on paper, and boom, your tax bill shrinks. Second loophole, the big one, depreciation. This is wild. Let's say you buy a house for $200,000. The government lets you pretend that the building part of that house is slowly falling apart over 27.5 years. So every single year, you get to write off a chunk of that house as if it's losing value, even though in reality, the property might actually be going up in value. That's thousands of dollars you don't pay taxes on. It's literally free money just for owning property. Third loophole, live-in hacks. If you buy a house and live in it for at least 2 years, then sell it, you don't pay capital gains tax on the profit. Up to $250,000 if you're single, $500,000 if you're married. That means you could live in a house, flip it later, and walk away with the gains tax-free. Now let's move to the sneaky bank side of things. How to get loans for cheap. Everybody thinks you need 20% down, a perfect credit score, and to sign your life away. Not true. There are loopholes here too. One of the biggest is owner-occupied loans. If you buy a multifamily property, like a duplex or triplex, and live in one of the units, the bank treats it like you're just buying a home, not an investment. What does that mean? It means you can use an FHA loan, only 3.5% down instead of 20%. That's the difference between needing $50,000 up front and needing like $7,000. Same house, way less money. And here's where it gets even better. Your tenants in the other units, their rent counts as your income. So when the bank looks at your application, they're like, oh, this guy already has money coming in from the property. That makes you less risky, and it helps you qualify for a bigger loan. Now let's talk interest rates, because this is where most people get crushed. The bank gives you a number, you sign, and that's it. But the loophole? Negotiation and programs nobody talks about. For example, some banks offer first-time homebuyer loans with rates way lower than standard. Sometimes, they'll even cover part of your closing costs. The catch? You have to ask.
They're not going to advertise it like a billboard. Another loophole, credit unions. Everybody runs to big banks, but credit unions often give way better rates and are more flexible with people who don't have perfect credit. They're smaller, they want your business, and they're more likely to work with you. And let me drop a secret one: interest-only loans. Now, this one you have to use carefully, but here's the play. For the first 5 to 10 years, you're only paying interest, not the principal. That means your monthly payments are way lower. If you're renting the place out, that's extra cash flow for you. Then, when the value of the property goes up, you refinance, lock in better terms, and start paying down the principal later. The last loophole I'll give you: use someone else's money. That $10,000 you saved, don't just throw it all into a down payment. Instead, look for banks or programs that let you leverage grants, partner funds, or even seller financing. Sometimes the seller themselves will let you pay them in installments instead of going through a bank. That's called creative financing, and it's how people with very little upfront cash end up owning properties. So yeah, if you thought buying your first property was just save money, go to the bank, pay taxes, you're missing the real game. The loopholes are everywhere. You just need to know where to look.